Hey everyone, welcome back to You Are Here. I'm your host, Danny, and this is a podcast all about growing up and figuring it out together. Today, I'm so excited to talk about this topic because I've been thinking about it a lot. It's right now the endish of winter, February. We're kind of getting into the spring vibe. Obviously, summer I know has a lot of feelings. I like the summertime. I love the idea of going to the beach, spending time with my friends, everything like that. But I know that summer can also be full of dread for people because, we're all hot and sweaty. We're trying to wear the least amount of clothing that's acceptable in your context. And I know that can sometimes bring a lot of emotions and a lot of things that cause a lot of hurt or fear or anxiety. And that's exactly what I want to talk about today. Okay, so I want to talk about the idea of hating your body or, the opposite, loving your body. But I really actually want to hone in on hating your body this episode because I have definitely had a very up and down journey with my body image and like the way that I see myself, which I think is very interesting because I don't know if many people would say that that's the first thing that they would even notice about me or like think about me. But I wanted to, and what actually started me wanting to talk about this topic is the idea that, or the story that when I was about 2 years ago, I went on vacation with my friends and I had like a full on, like, spiral, like self hating thing on this vacation. And I was with like my literal three best friends. We were in Florida. It was so much fun. The whole trip was so much fun, and everyone was just wearing their bathing suits. My friends are like not at all judgmental whatsoever, of course. Like they are never ever that kind of, but it was something in my brain that was like, you are so ugly and disgusting and everything about your body is wrong. And I couldn't shut it off. And I was probably for like an hour and a half that I just decided to like listen to every single negative thought that my mind has ever decided to conjure up. And, it be your own mind at the end of the day. And I remember, like, I'm smiling, but it's because I can talk about it now. But I really have not thought about this for so long because it was such an absurd, like, moment for me. I don't ever usually think that way either. So it was a very interesting, like, shocking, jarring moment for me to have as well. And um, I remember, like, frantically looking up TikToks and Googling how to get rid of cellulite and how to make like stretch marks go away and like how to make your stomach flat and how like all of these things. And I was probably for an hour, I was sobbing, crying, like I was an absolute mess. And I remember my friends were like, we're just having fun. Like they were so confused by my reaction, as was I, of course. And they were just like, are you okay? Like we all feel that way about ourselves at some point. Like they were trying to make me seem normal. But to me, I was like, no, this is not, you guys don't get it. Like you're different than me and everybody else is perfect except me. And it was all of those thoughts that I really like was actively being consumed by. Ultimately, I calmed down, of course, eventually, and I just talked about it to my friends and they were like, "Girl, like I'm sorry obviously that you felt this way." But, they really were trying to make it be like I think everyone experiences that, which I do think is true as a woman especially. I think everyone goes through some type of thing where you just become hyper aware and very sensitive about what your body looks like really out of nowhere. Um, or out of like the context that women live in, which is typically being used as ornamentation in a man's narrative. Anyways, that is besides the point. But I really wanted to talk about that story because I've never shared it on this podcast and I thought it was really important because I can't imagine like or actually I can imagine that there are so many people that have gone through that go through that consistently, that live that way, that listen to those thoughts. And I kind of just wanted to talk about becoming okay with what your body looks like. I think I have come to a place where, like, maybe it's age, maybe it's experience, maybe it's whatever. I feel like I'm very neutral now with what my body looks like. I feel comfortable in my body. It works at the end of the day. That's kind of what I um emphasize on to myself, that like I'm healthy. I can move, I can do things, I can stretch, I can run, I can jump. Like there's no pain in my body. It works, you know? And so I think at the end of the day, like treating my yeah. Okay. So unfortunately I will have to get on a soapbox for this episode just for a little bit. Um so I think all of those thoughts, number one, were that I was having. Let's analyze the situation. I realize as well, I didn't start this episode with a question that we're answering, and we're not. We're dissecting this moment of my panic anxiety attack about what my body looks like. And hopefully this will help you guys as well whenever you find yourself in a situation like this or your brain doing that to you, that you can be like, actually, we're going to take these steps, okay? So let's dissect this moment. Let's all go to this same place and time together. The context is me and my friends on this vacation, having a great time, looking beautiful, going to the beach every single day. We are outside, hanging out in our bathing suits, tanning, okay? Everybody's in their bathing suits, it's all fine. We pull out a camera, everyone's smiling, cheering, having a great time, taking pictures, la la la, having fun. Camera comes out, I immediately like I have to go to the restroom. Go to the restroom, cry for hours and hours and hours. It probably wasn't, but it felt like it. Cried for so long, Googling literally everything of like how to be a different person, basically in 10 minutes. And I did everything. I fixed my makeup, I fixed my hair, I like tried everything to make myself feel better. And like in that moment, I just could not. But I think the important context for this in particular was it was like pictures that were, I think, like the trigger of me feeling the pressure to look a certain way, and even like comparing my body to my friends' bodies who, as I mentioned before, like they're just perfect. Like I think my friends are perfect, every single last one of them. I've never thought a negative thought about any of my friends. And I just thought in that moment, like I am not like good enough to be participate in this picture situation. Like please, like do not put the lens in front of me. And I really was like, well, like I'll take the pictures. I could not be there. Like I felt like I was suffocating. We were outside. Okay. And so all of that, but I think it was the camera that started everything, and then it just made me spiral. But I do think there is a piece of this that, of course, social media is a huge one. Like if I was going to be in a picture, I wanted to be like the best representation of like me, and in that moment I just wasn't feeling it, which is a normal natural thing. And like yeah, if you don't want to be in a photo, like opt out, of course. But I think I also like so desperately wanted to be a part of something and like a part of that moment, but I just felt like I didn't have um the aesthetic to match the vibe of what my body looks like, right? And that really, number one, sucks. And also just made me feel like I wasn't good enough to be in that space with my best friends, which is stupid. And like, let me also preference all of this by saying this is all stupid. Like I was being stupid, okay? But it was just like all these things that made me feel that way. I think also as someone who has been on the internet for like since the internet happened, I was on Tumblr, I've been on Pinterest, I've been on Instagram since it all started. Like I think there is such a emphasis on policing your body. I remember when that insane photo, I'm not even going to say it, but this insane photo of like a very very thin woman was going around the internet, and it was like it had a quote on it about how about being skinny and like being thin. And number one, like that is crazy. Like thinness does not equate happiness, doesn't equate success, doesn't equate anything. That has nothing to do with anything, with who you are as a person. But I do think like as women, there has been such a emphasis on our bodies and policing our bodies. Outside in the world, yeah, but like also in church and in the context of religion and like the hierarchy of marriage and things like that. I think all of those things have communicated to women that our bodies are up for discussion, number one, and also our bodies are not our own, if that makes any sense. Which I think is another interesting tension that women fall into because of course like women have the ability to carry children, which in that like our body is not our own for those 9 months and even before anyways. But I do think there is a something there that I just think is very interesting, and I think is a tension that girls carry when they're very young, that people have a say in their bodies, where I just don't think men carry that expectation or responsibility as they move in the world. Um so yeah, that was the moment that I kind of started spiraling, or I started spiraling in that scenario. And then from there, I started trying to like take control of the situation by obviously like Googling like how to get rid of cellulite, how to edit my photos, how to edit them out, how to change things about me. And I was trying to control what I couldn't when I felt like I was going out of control, which maybe you can also relate to that as well, of trying to like bring hyper awareness into your life and also police yourself with what you're eating, with like how like your workouts, whatever it may be, but you begin taking control in these areas so that way you never have to feel out of control again. And I think that is actually like a fallacy of your life. I think your life will always have things that make you feel out of control. And sometimes it's compounding. Sometimes you don't even expect to have an anxiety attack over a photo, but it'll happen. And I don't think control is necessarily, I think it's like a trauma response for your brain of like shock of trying to figure out like how to make sense of something that doesn't make sense. Because in that moment, I was really confused. I had been taking photos at the beach with my friends all week, and it was just that one thing that broke something in me. And I think that things like that will happen and you have to kind of figure out, well, I have a choice here to make. I can either control myself and stop living and stop existing until I feel like I deserve to, until I make my life like my version of existence as idyllic as I want it to be, which obviously then removes the whole point of life, of living life, of course. Like life comes with a things you don't expect and things you can't control. And so when your knee jerk reaction is control, then you kind of just become a shell of yourself at the end of the day, and not a very fun person to be around if you're trying to just always control things. And this is me analyzing me, okay? Um, and so I know like a lot of people can probably relate to that of just wanting to control things. Oldest daughter, etc. You know, that's my complex. So I just wanted to have something that I could rationalize in the moment. And if I could take some power back from a moment that I felt like was out of my hands, I felt like I was doing something instead of just like sitting in the pain and in my questions. Um, okay. And then from that moment, I remember going back outside. And I think I like tried to play it off like I was totally fine, even though like obviously there was tear tracks all over my face and I was freaking out. And my friends were just kind of like, and then eventually I just said like I think I just said something like I just feel so ugly. Like, and I was comparing myself to you guys, and like I the other thing was in the moment I'm very self-aware, and I knew all of the things that were causing me to feel that way in terms of the thoughts that I'd chosen to just like take over my body. um and I remember thinking, well, like it's because I'm comparing, and it's because I feel bad. It's because I don't like this bathing suit. It's because I don't like the color. I don't like the cut. I don't like the way it makes like my arms look. I don't like whatever. Like I knew all of the practical reasons why I was feeling that way, but it still didn't take away the feelings. And I think obviously bird's eye view, 2 3 years removed from the situation, I can really say that I also didn't want to feel those feelings. And I've had to learn that I can't run away from feelings that in the moment seem to have all the explanations, but none of the um none of the emotional weight of what I was feeling in the moment, right? And I tend to be a very rational person. I tend to think first and then feel at the very last, or not at all. And I think I had to learn that sometimes, though you have all of the reasons for why you're feeling those things, sometimes all of those reasons just don't have the emotional weight that your and the release that your body needed in that moment. And I think there's a really beautiful quote from Jack Hayford, who was a pastor. He's passed away and like a theologian. He said that tears are a gift from the Holy Spirit. And like I've genuinely had to say that to myself because I feel I don't like crying. I don't like feeling bad. I don't like all of those things. And I would rather just run away. But ultimately, they are a gift from the Holy Spirit. And it's also a gift that your body is able to release emotion in that way or passion in that way. And, whether that moment was a straw breaking the camel's back because of all of the things that happened in the week that had maybe subconsciously made me feel bad about being at the beach or making me feel bad that like I can't like jog in a bikini because my boobs would literally fall out of the top. Like things like that. Those kinds of little things that it's not a big deal and it's silly to like reflect back, but it's also kind of like, dang, it's a bummer. Like I wish I could do that. And all of those emotions kind of compound over time and then you're left with like a moment that break the straw that breaks the camel's back of just feeling bad about yourself. And I think sometime or I've had to learn and that situation and that moment really taught me that like I can recognize all of those things, but there's nothing like just like letting my body release all of that. And, there's of course the practical things as well, like what are you listening to, what's a narrative you're telling yourself about your body neutrality, body positivity, blah blah blah. Okay. I understand all that as well. And I do also need to say, like, I generally don't live in that place. This is why it's such a isolated incident, which is why I can talk about it very like like medically. And that's why I think it is important because I generally like don't listen to those things, but I do think I learned a lot from that moment as I'm saying now. Um because it was so impactful and also so random, out of like how I usually think about myself and my body and things like that. But I do think it's important um to like analyze yourself. And I feel like I've talked about that in other podcasts before, to just really reflect on the things that really harbor a lot of emotional intensity in your life and kind of walk back the breadcrumb trail of what got you there, what got you out of there, and then you can move forward and learn how to process your emotions, process, your traumas, process whatever it may be that happened in that moment. I feel like that's really important. And so this moment is exactly that. It's like an isolated situation where I I felt horrible about myself. And you can really ask anybody in my life though, now presently like I've literally I don't I've I have not done that again since. So um yeah. But the other part of this conversation that's very important as well is how to not live in that place because I know a lot of girls, especially with summer coming around like I mentioned at the beginning, feel that pressure to look a certain way and to um like make their body perform. um, yeah, so I want to talk about that too. Um, okay, so I wanted to talk about moving forward now. I know there's many girls who, and boys, of course, like not discriminating here, who maybe feel that pressure to make their bodies perform. And I don't mean perform like athlete, Olympian. I mean perform like dance monkey. Like you need to have triceps and biceps and traps in 2 months and counting. Do you know what I mean? And it's not really for any reason that is health wise, but it's for aesthetics, for Instagram. And I want to talk about that for a little bit. I think when summer rolls around, when all those things roll around, I think it's important to ask yourself a few questions. And even me, I've been thinking about like doing the extreme things, like going on the weight loss drugs or whatever, going on a meal plan, all this stuff. And like ultimately I have to ask myself your questions. And at the end of the day, I do believe your body, your choice. I believe if you want to lose 40 pounds because you want to just trim up, DSDF, different strokes, different folks. It does not do anything to me. It doesn't affect my life, but it affects your life. And ultimately, what I care about is what is a paradigm that you're approaching the way that you look. I think for women, oftentimes it is, whether it's like directly or subliminally, the reason why we feel pressure to look a certain way is to get a man or to get a partner. I think that is the way that a lot of women have been taught, that whether again directly like through your family, through your friends, or through media. I think I remember having conversations with my friends when I was in 3rd grade that was talking about like, well, I need to wear a shirt that shows off my boobs more. Why are we children talking about that? Maybe not 3rd grade. That's me being dramatic. I like middle school. But like little or 3rd grade, it really was like, well, you need to take off your glasses because you look dumb or things like that. Like, but it's always about like what you look like and this overarching message that what the best a woman has to offer her is her aesthetics, her face, her visuals. And that's just number one not true, but also I think it is so important to realize when you're approaching that paradigm with your own body of like, if I don't lose this weight, then I'll be alone forever. What's wrong with being alone forever? Like what's wrong with like actually not, like why do you feel the need to live for the approval of men or like people in general? Those kinds of questions I think are important to ask yourself and to really break down that paradigm, because I do genuinely think that so much of the media that women consume is to like make us ornamentation. And of course, most of the time it is like in a man's life, but I think even the way that beauty is approached in women, it's typically not an aspect of a woman. It's typically the only thing a woman has to offer, the way that it's communicated. And I think it's really important to recognize those patterns of language and of marketing and of thought when you realize that, oh, this person or the way that this thing is being marketed to me, they're making it sound like being pretty is all I have, or things, or the way that my butt looks in these jeans is all that is important. And if it's marketing, I get it. Like they're trying to sell something. So also context is important. But I still think that there is something to be said about women being allowed to be all those things. Women are allowed to be intelligent, funny, clever, crude, and beautiful. Do you know what I mean? Women are allowed to be all of these multitudes. And I just don't think, whereas I think a lot of times men, they can be one and it's totally fine. Um and yeah, so I just feel like that's something else just to consider when you're thinking about your body. And that's something else that I've also definitely have been breaking down in my own life of just like, why do I feel the need to like for my for me to look a certain way in anything. And so yeah, I think the way that I dress, I like to think is like a silent protest of just classic women like expectations. I don't typically like dressing. I don't feel comfortable in like overtly feminine things anyways. And so I always like balancing it with something a little bit more masculine. So that's kind of my vibe regardless of the narrative, but I do just think that that's something to break down as well. And it really has helped me like come out of dressing for the male gaze or feeling like pressure around what I look like, because ultimately I'm more than what I look like. And when you really lock into that, it doesn't, it really takes a back seat. And I'm so comfortable with what I look like and who I am. That doesn't mean I still like don't like a picture of myself or feel like ugly some days or hate the way my hair looks. Like, of course, those are just natural things, but I just think realizing that you're more than just what you look like, generally speaking, is really important. Um, okay, and then the other part of like accepting your body and wearing a bathing suit. Um, I think there's like two parts to this as well. Accepting your body is just what's really helped me is like realizing that my body works. And whether maybe you're living with something that is like a complicated illness or autoimmune something and maybe like that statement doesn't even ring true for you, but I feel like if you we also live in a time where there's solutions or somewhat solutions or help for your body. And I think also focusing on that, like, okay, like I'm in physical pain, but I'm so thankful that there's something like Tylenol that can take this pain away or something like that. I think whenever you switch the story you're telling yourself to like include gratitude or being thankful, I think it really does have an effect on your body. And I can say with full confidence the nastiest, ugliest, most horrendous people, men or women, that I've ever encountered in my life are the entitled, prideful, egotistical rats in this world that have not a single ounce of gratitude or gratefulness or anything like that in their life because they're like void of I would say substance. Because I think whenever your world becomes so honed in on on just your life, on your bubble, it shrinks your worldview so small that you can't see anyone else but yourself. And that's when you become a monster. Um, and so I think always including some type of gratitude in the narrative you're telling yourself, whether or not the statement like my body works can is like rings true for you, there's still something in there that you can be thankful for. And I think even that statement in itself, like you're not saying anything aesthetic about your body, you're actually just saying that you're thankful that it works for you, that it lets you live, lets you breathe, that your brain is functioning, things like that. There's always something to be thankful for outside of what your body looks like. And that is something very important to me. And my mom has been on this podcast before and she has gone through a lot of ups and downs with her body. She went through cancer, she had a double mastectomy, and you should go listen to those episodes because they're really great. But I think also watching her go through that journey and her like losing parts of her body and her body recovering and all of those things going through chemo, seeing that journey and process really made me realize what the human body is capable of and how dare I reduce my body to just a visual appeal because bodies are genuinely incredible. And and I'm so thankful that mine works. And so, of course there's not to say that there aren't things that I would want to change or can change and will change in the future, but still right now today I'm going to be thankful and celebrate my body for working. Um and then the whole bathing suit conversation of it all, maybe this isn't the answer that people want, but I just think ultimately it doesn't matter, you know? And I think that's kind of my mentality now is like it is what it is. And, am I like the first to like wear a like low-waisted jeans with like my butt crack a little bit of my butt crack hanging out? Like, no, of course not. Like, I'm not going to do that to myself or anyone else. But like when it comes to like being at the pool with your friends, like girl, just put on a two-piece. Like literally the world is not going to fall apart. Like you're not going to burn up. Like you're not going to burn in hell. Like nothing crazy is going to happen by you just deciding that you deserve to wear a bathing suit, you know? And I think it's really empowering. I remember being in France. I think also France changed my life, which sounds so like, ugh, but it did. I was only there for like 4 days. Um, but we went to the beaches, and I think seeing women, young and old, and men, young and old, just like hanging out. I mean, all the beaches there are pretty much, or at least where we were pretty much like topless beaches as well. And all the men like in Europe wear, what do they call them? Yeah, I was gonna call them budgie smugglers to call them in Australia. Yeah, they all wear speedos, so it just was like not a big deal, and it really was interesting to be in a culture where like bodies in general were perceived as very neutral, and I think that's also something very interesting. I think if you need any kind of, heartwarming things as a woman, you should just look up uh some art. There's a beautiful sculptural museum. I'll remember what it's called in France, and all the women who are in the sculptures, they all just look like real women, and they all have like, like their stomachs aren't perfectly toned and flat. They just look like human women. And they have thighs. They have like they're beautiful. They're sculptures. And I think it's just really beautiful that art has accurately documented what women look like, whereas um real it seems like now real life women can't even document what real life women look like. And so I think it's very beautiful to go back and look at those art pieces and be inspired by physical things like sculptures, like art, which are inspired by cultures that really did not have an issue with different kinds of bodies. And that's not to say, obviously, I didn't live in that time, so like I can be totally dead wrong, and but it still is very encouraging to just look at these images and see yourself reflected back in these women that were muses, that were beautiful, that were considered groundbreaking art. Anyways, I love art. But yeah, and I also, this is just like me going off on a little tangent now. I think it's really interesting in art, like from that period. Typically, men were the ones that had the like correct body physique. They were the ones that had like the muscles, the abs, like all those things. And to be fair, it was because men's work then was more like labor focused. Um, and but still, I just think that's funny how it does seem like it's flipped to a degree um, where now, or not, maybe not even flipped, but maybe that's become more equal, I suppose. Um, where women and men are having the same or feel the same expectations for their body, like physical appeal. Um, but yeah, back to the bathing suits. I do feel as though you just kind of got to send it. And of like I was saying earlier, context is important. Like if you're at a kid's birthday party, obviously like don't pull up in your Brazilian thong bikini. But like if you're just hanging out with your friends, you're tanning for a good like a chill pool day, literally have do what you got to do, girl. Like I'm vibing. And and I do recommend going to France as well. Just cuz like you should, but also it really is really cool to see it seems like a culture that is very body neutral, which comes with its pluses and bad things too. But yeah. Anyways, that's really all I had to say about this. Thank you for dissecting my psyche and in the journey of loving my body. And I hope this helped you as well as you go through your life and maybe process, or this conversation brought up moments and things like that in your life that you can go ahead and go through yourself. And maybe it's that same process of realizing that your triggers and things like that. But maybe it's just as simple as changing the narrative, including gratitude in what you tell yourself, and and also just like sending it. Because at the end of the day, who the heck cares? And that's just the fact of life. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you had a great time talking with me. Um, I am really excited about this season. I think it's going to be great. We have a lot of exciting topics. Derek's going to hop in a few episodes. Hopefully we have some more guests. It's a very exciting time. I really do invite you to please subscribe to this channel, leave us a comment. I'd love to hear your process in loving your body, or change, or the story you tell yourself. I feel like that'd be really cool if you would drop some tips in the comments. And yeah, if you're listening, please follow on wherever you're listening to, Spotify, Apple Podcast. Follow us on Instagram at youarehere.pod. You can follow me on Instagram at Danielle Ciani. And that's on that. That's all I got for you today. Thank you so much for listening. Love ya. Bye.